Welcome to Satsang. इसको बंद कर दीजिएगा जोशिया. अच्छा लग रहा लेकिन we have the beautiful natural breeze of the garden in the evening. So starting as usual with a question that's come in advance from our global family from across the world, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. What is the absolute worst thing we could ever do? The absolute worst thing we could ever do. It would be, I think, to deny who we are and why we're here. Because anything external, so if we say, well, the worst thing you could do is murder someone, I think most of us could agree that's probably like the worst thing most of us could think of that you could actually do. But if you take that on a deeper level, the reason that we commit horrible atrocities like that is out of ignorance. Ignorance of who we are, ignorance of the nature of the universe. I feel anger, hatred, jealousy, all of the things that would lead you to lie, cheat, steal, harm, murder. We feel all of that because we forget who we are and why we're here. As long as we think that we are just the body, that we are just the story, that we are just the role, well, we're going to harm ourselves by not actually experiencing the truth of who we are. And we're going to move through the world in harm. Doesn't mean we're going to become murderers. That takes a special kind of hatred and ignorance and crazy. But we're going to harm others because without recognizing that every single person is divine, without recognizing that core divine truth in all, we treat people like objects. And we treat them like objects to be either used, oh, this one's going to be very helpful to get where I need to go, to do what I need, good stepping stone, or we see them as obstacles. This one is an obstacle on my path. Need to get this person out of my way. So as long as we see people as objects, either we're using them or we're pushing them away. In both cases, we're harming them. And on the deepest level, regardless of what we do in the outer world, we are harming ourselves because we are creating God knows how many lifetimes worth of trouble for ourselves by not knowing who we are and living in ignorance. Imagine that you've been given a very precious gift by someone who loves you. Precious, precious gift. Now, imagine that someone asks you, what's the worst thing you could possibly do with that gift? Well, there's two answers. One answer is forget about it entirely. Someone who loved you gave you this precious, precious, precious gift. Worst thing to do would be to throw it in the back of your closet and pretend it doesn't exist. Neglect it entirely. The other would be to take that gift and actively use it to harm someone. So let's say someone gives me a precious diamond necklace out of deep love and devotion. And I stick it in my closet and I pretend that I never got it. Well, it's harming the bhav, the love of the person who gave it to me. It's harming the oneness of that connection between the person who gave it to me and myself. So that would be one worst thing I could do, is just ignore it entirely. The other worst thing I could do would be to take the diamond necklace and go out and strangle someone else with it. Now, in our lives, this life is that gift. This life is that diamond necklace or beautiful artwork or whatever to you the most perfect, best gift would be. New flat screen TV, new, iPhone 13, whatever in your mind you think, God, if I just had that. So someone gives it to you. Someone who really loves you. Well, this life is the best gift. And it's been given to us by God, who loves us in the most complete, powerful way. So for us to ignore this gift of our life is like putting it in the closet and forgetting it and pretending it doesn't exist. For us to pretend, to deny that this life, every minute, every moment is precious, is harm. It's harm to ourself. It's harm to the connection between us and God. When I consciously decide to deny it and ignore it, well, obviously, I've just created separation between me and the one who gave it to me. But also, if I use this gift to harm someone else by objectifying them, by cheating them, lying to them, abusing them, insulting them, treating them with greed or lust, well, that's like taking the diamond necklace and strangling someone with it, right? It's the gift you've been given and you're using it to harm someone else. Not only are you not recognizing it for what it is, but then you're using it to harm others. So it all comes down to that place we started, which is the worst thing we can do is deny the truth of who we are. Deny this extraordinary gift of a human life being embodied by soul, spirit, divinity. The truth of us as divine, but the gift of being able to have this human body so that we have the possibility of recognizing the divine in us. The core of an earthworm is also divine. The core of a dog is divine. The core of a monkey is divine. Every being on earth, the core is divine. It's like the line from the Upanishads I always recite that says, Isha vasyamidam sarvam, yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Everything in the universe is pervaded by the divine. There is nothing, no one, not pervaded by the divine. The earthworm, the dog, the cat, the monkey. Us, the blade of grass, the tree. They're all divine. The difference is the level of consciousness. So chances are the earthworm is not able to have awareness that it's divine. It's not able to get out of earthworm consciousness. It's just, I'm an earthworm. It's just kind of the beginning and the end of its consciousness. The animal kingdom is like that. Even the really sweet, wonderful animals who are kind and helpful, loving, they don't have the consciousness to be able to get out of their dog consciousness or cat consciousness. They may be loving and sweet and wonderful, nicer than humans in many cases. But nonetheless, they're not able to break out of dog consciousness into divine consciousness. That's why it's said that the human birth is this greatest gift, because in the human birth is the only birth where we have the opportunity to know that I'm here in a human body, but to break out of just physical human consciousness, to break out of the consciousness of just the body that's born and dies, into the consciousness of that which I am, pervaded by the divine. So we're not more divine or better divine than an earthworm. We just have the gift of being able to be more conscious and therefore have the possibility of actually experiencing it. So this birth is a gift. And to deny it, I think, is the greatest, or the worst thing we can do. But of course, as I always remind myself and others, the universe is very patient. You blow it this time, okay, you'll just come back and do it again. Blow it that time, okay, you'll just come back and do it again. But why bother? Why not get it right? Not just because it makes the cycle of birth and death faster, but it gives us the opportunity to actually experience heaven here on earth. When we deny who we are, we suffer. We suffer. Anger is suffering. Hatred is suffering. Jealousy is suffering. Competition is suffering. When we experience those, we are suffering. So when we have the possibility to not suffer? Why would we choose suffering? So let's all stop doing the worst thing that too many of us do, and really commit ourselves to finding the truth of who we are, to experiencing it, rather than denying it. Are there any questions that anyone here might have? Yes.
Hi, I have a question. When it comes to friends, and you have a friend that is not a good influence, and either because it's a bad person or because they're destructive habits or whatever it is, and your mom or friends tell you to stay away from that person because you're going to get in trouble. So what is the right thing to do? Is it to be close to that person, to help them and be a good influence to them and make them change, or really stay away from them? Or either like something in the middle? What is the right thing to do?
Beautiful. So we're coming out of, hopefully by God's grace, the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic taught us a lot of things on a very deep spiritual level. It also taught us a lot on just a basic logistic level, pragmatic level. If I want to stay healthy, if I want to stay safe, what are the rules, right? Maintain social distance, right? Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Right? 3 basic, easy things to take care of my physical health and stay safe. If someone is not well, if someone has tested COVID positive, well, then the rules get even stricter, right? Then that person is supposed to actually quarantine. And if you have to be around them, if you are in a house with them, then there's all kinds of rules about double masking, much more than 6-foot distances. And we've all done it, even with people we love the most in the world, even with family members, close family members, children, parents, spouses. Because we knew that we needed to do it in order to stay safe. There were so many houses across the world, so many people I know where one member of the family was some kind of a frontline worker, a doctor, a nurse, working in an NGO. They were out, they were constantly being exposed. And for months, they didn't even meet the rest of their family in the house. Like they would enter the garage and, go into their room and not meet, because they didn't want to expose the rest of the family. Now, why do I give you this example when you ask about friends who aren't good influences? Because along with our physical immunity, we're not just physical beings. We're not just cells that get invaded by a virus or a bacteria and get some degree of illness. We're energetic beings. And as energetic beings, we need to protect our energy. And in order to protect our energy, we do a lot of things. There's places that we don't necessarily go to. There's music that we wouldn't necessarily listen to, movies we wouldn't see, right? As you start on a spiritual path, and you start living a sattvic life, maybe you stop going to see those blood and guts, horrible violence horror movies, right? Because it impacts the energy of my being, like I feel different in them. Hopefully you'll stop, watching pornography, especially like violent pornography. Because you understand it it impacts my energy in a way that's really not in alignment with where I'm going. And there are people whose choices in life, whose way of being in the world isn't in alignment energetically with where we're going. It doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them wrong. It just means that their values, their ethics, their energy, their vocabulary, their choices are not in alignment with where I want to go. Now, one of the options you gave was stay with them and try to help them. It's a very beautiful and very noble idea. Sadly, it's one that countless millions of people have tried for God knows how long. As long as there have been humans, probably, we've tried to change each other. Whether to bring somebody out of drug addiction or alcohol addiction, to bring someone out of depression, to bring someone out of certain habits they have. And tragically, it almost never works. Our hearts are pure and full of love and compassion and generosity, and we want to help. But until and unless someone themselves decides not to want to change, because you get that a lot, right? People will say, I want to quit smoking. Truth is, if they really wanted to quit smoking, they'd quit. Plenty of people quit. Yes, it's difficult, absolutely. But they can do it. We actually do have control over what our fingers do. And if I really didn't want my fingers to smoke a cigarette, I could make them stop doing that. But what you get instead are a lot of people who want to quit. Meaning they know they should want to quit, but actually inside they're getting too much from either the addiction itself or from the helplessness of being addicted, the story around it. And so they don't really want to quit. Their intellectual mind says, you really should want to quit. So they're wanting to want to quit. And the problem with people like that, as wonderful and loving and divine as they are, is they can't actually be helped. Until someone is at their wit's end, or what we call hits bottom, and says, I am willing to do whatever it takes to change. To let go of patterns, to let go of identities, to let go of stories. To hand over all my money to you so I don't use it to buy drugs, whatever it is, willing to do anything. Only then are they helpable. And a lot of people, a lot of very, very beautifully intentioned people with beautiful hearts, suffer a lot in trying to help someone who can't or won't be helped. And instead what ends up happening is we actually catch the illness. Hence why I began with the COVID experience. It is why your parents would say, keep a safe distance. Because energetically, we pick up from people around us. In satsang, the word satsang, there's two parts, sat and sang. Sat means truth, And sang, or sangha, means in the association of, in the community of. And in the Hindu tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, our sangha, our community, people with whom we interact and spend time, is critical. In fact, one of the core prayers in Buddhism says, Buddham sharanam gacchami, Dhammam sharanam gacchami, Sangam sharanam gacchami. And it means I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma, the teachings, the right way. I take refuge in the Sangha. So the three most important things in our lives in the Buddhist tradition are the Buddha, inside us, the way of the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings, and our community. And this is why your parents are saying, stay away, because they know. They've seen it. Chances are they've, with their beautiful hearts, have tried to change people in your situation as well. And what they're trying to do is protect you. Love that person, but take care of yourself. It's like if someone's got COVID, you don't do either them or you any benefit by being close to them without masks just to feed them something. Well, then you're just going to get sick, then you're going to be useless to them and to yourself and to everyone. You're much better off working out a way where they can get the food they need and you stay safe. In the same way, I'm not saying drop this person like a hot potato and just forget they ever existed. Love them. Let them know you're there, but from a distance. Not in a way where energetically they are leaking on you. Because that's what happens. People energetically, they leak on us. We know what it's like to be around someone who's just constantly talking nonsense. Right? Someone who's just really negative, a gossip, a this, and it's like, when can I get out of here? Like just energetically, it's really tiring to be around that person. And we gravitate instead to the energy of people who are not just more enjoyable to be around, but it's actually healthier for us. That's why we gravitate toward it. Energetically, we know this person is healthy for me. This person, as much as the fun-loving gossiper in my own mind might enjoy being with them, is really not so healthy for me. And so in the same way, you're going to have to take care of yourself. It's not selfish. It's critical. And maybe that person will change. Look, if you're important enough to them, if you're as important to them as they are to you, maybe they'll change so they can be near you. And maybe not. Every one of us on spiritual paths has had to have some relationships that just drop off. Sometimes it's an actual break. Sometimes it's more just a matter of you get more and more distant, more and more distant, more and more distant, and eventually it just fizzles out. We've all had to do that. Because we've all had relationships that are no longer conducive to the path that we're on. So take care of your capital S self, and then take care of others, right? It's like in the plane, they say first put on your own gas mask, oxygen mask, and then help others. Because if you try to help others first without putting yours on, you're going to die. And then you're not going to be a help to anyone. So you first put yours on, and then you can help so many. So you first take care of yourself, get yourself strong, grounded, anchored. And then you'll be able to be much more of a help to so many. Yeah. Are there any? Yes. And then.
Yeah, so this is just to, from the first question, what worst thing we could ever do. So in that we understood what you have explained nicely, that we first beautiful thing that God has given our life. So in that regard, you just said we should not do something which will give us suffering, like hate, anger, etc. But you also mentioned that competition. But in competition, it is related to your work. So how that is also suffering. So that also you must understand.
So how is competition suffering? He's asking. If it's related to your work, how is it suffering? Doing your best and succeeding is not suffering. What creates suffering is when I have created in my mind a separation between you and me, and I have created in my mind this thought that in order for me to be happy, I have to do better than you, or take something from you, or beat you, or show you. However we think of it, that creates suffering. Because anyone who has ever competed with anyone else knows it's a virus in our mind. Tell me that you don't go home thinking about your competitors. Right? Now, sometimes it can be healthy and fun. Kids in school playing sports, right? Oh, I'm gonna run faster than, their fastest person. But as soon as someone in our mind has become the obstacle to our happiness, we suffer. So instead of thinking, I'm going to run faster than you, or I'm going to beat you, we just think, I'm going to do my very best. Because then all I'm doing is getting myself to be more and more sincere, more and more committed. And that's wonderful. We should all do our best. But the moment someone or something, whether it's a person or a team or a company, has become the thing, the one I need to beat, then I suffer. Because then we eat, drink, and sleep that person or team. Then you're always thinking about them. They've become a virus in your mind. Instead of thinking about God, you're thinking about that person. So you suffer. So that's where competition leads to suffering. Compete against yourself. Compete against how well you did last time. Do better this time. The rest will take care of itself. Yes.
Pranam. So, though I have a list of questions, but when I listen to your elaborate answers, most of my quest and thirst get settled. Thank you so much for that. So particularly I wanted to ask, the thing that has been bothering me recently is that there have been some acts in the past by the people in the past which led to certain consequences. And then I noticed a pattern that all those people who do those acts, the consequences are the same. So right now, presently in my life, if a person is doing similar acts, I jump to the conclusion that this is what is going to happen in the end. So I want to save myself from that tedious journey and just end that relationship right here, because I don't want to reach that conclusion. So how just is it to judge your present relationships based on your past traumas or past learnings? Because everybody tells me that this is not right. You are you and this is this person. You are not that person in the past. This person is not that person in the past. But I feel that it's also, I cannot totally ignore what I have learned from the past. So how much is it just and unjust? I sometimes get confused.
So I'm less worried about the justice of it. And I'm more concerned about your heart being open or closed. When we get hurt, what we tend to do is our heart closes, and then we become very skeptical of everyone. So one person hurts us and we start to sort of see the world through those eyes. Now, on the one hand, some of it is helpful. It teaches us something. If you were walking down the street and you got mugged, now when you walk down the street, you're going to be a lot more nervous. Not such a good thing. Hopefully you'll overcome that. But nonetheless, the lesson to be aware and careful is a very good lesson. You know, muggings can happen. So maybe now you are more aware. Maybe you don't go in certain areas. Maybe you don't go in certain times of the night. Maybe you've learned how to keep your money in a pocket rather than a purse or something, whatever it may be. You make decisions that are intelligent decisions based on experience you've had to protect yourself as much as you can from having the same thing happen again. But it doesn't mean you don't go out. Doesn't mean you don't walk the streets. Doesn't mean you never carry money. Doesn't mean that you're constantly terrified. You understand, yes, it happened. Yes, it could happen again. And not everyone out there is a mugger. The vast overwhelming majority of people are not muggers. And so just because I was mugged doesn't mean that I should start to see the world through the filter of people who are going to mug me. And that's the balance that you now need to find, is you take the lesson, how to be careful, what signs to look for. Is someone walking towards you a certain way? Are they looking at you a certain way? Did they cross the street to be next to you? You start to notice certain things, and that's good. But you walk down the street fearlessly. Because you know, I can't hide from the street. Got to get back out there. And the same thing is true in our relationships, whether it's friends, whether it's romance. People hurt us. People have hurt us in the past. People will likely hurt us in the future. It's the nature of what humans do to other humans, sadly. But you can't not open your heart. And so what you have to find, because there's no equation, I can't sit up here and give you the answer. You're going to need to find inside yourself, is the sign that I'm seeing something that could be very harmless, like someone crossing the street? I mean, for God's sakes, maybe they need to go into a store on the side of the street I'm walking in. Doesn't mean they're going to mug me. Not everyone who crosses the street is going to mug me. Just because the guy who did it crossed the street doesn't mean I have to pull out my, can of pepper spray and spray everyone who crosses the street. So in the same way, you've got to ask yourself, as these signs appear that you've seen in the past, ask yourself, is this just like someone crossing the street? I mean, could someone with good intentions also do this action? Does this action definitely mean that this person is just going to hurt me? Or is it the sort of thing that actually good people also do? And if it's the sort of thing that good people also do, then don't break the relationship. Because then you could be cutting a lot of good people out of your life. But if it's something that you know is ominous, then take care of yourself. Use the lessons you learned in the past. Take care of yourself. But only you can answer that inside. And that's where you've got what Pujya Swamiji always calls our internal GPS. Trust it. Just because you were hurt once doesn't mean you can't trust yourself. Because that's also what happens to us when we get hurt, is we start to really distrust ourselves. We feel like, my God, I didn't know it was going to happen. Which means I'm not trustworthy. And then we start to doubt ourselves. Don't. Just because someone took advantage of you doesn't mean you're not trustworthy. In a way, it's almost better to be a little more siddha. I know this on a personal example. Coming from America, I've been here now 25 years. But I'm very siddha. And I cannot tell you the number of times that someone will kind of take me for a ride, and I have no idea they've done it until someone else, one of our guys, an Indian person, says, "Nee, Didi, iska matlab nahi hai ye." And I had understood it totally differently. I had understood it in a very nice way, good-hearted way, truthful way, kind way. And they will say, "Nee, wo uska matlab nahi hai ye. Isliye wo keh rahe hain." And the truth is, I'm pretty smart. If I really wanted to develop the ability to pick out every single person who's pulling my leg, to pick out every single person who's telling some lie or inevitably who's going to end up, doing the wrong thing, I probably could develop that skill if I had really tried. But I don't want to develop it. I don't want to move through the world suspiciously. I don't want to wonder when every single person is talking to me, are they lying? I bet they're lying. Everybody lies. I don't want to think like that. I'd much rather be surprised and even a little bit hurt every time I find out someone has lied to me than develop the drishti that sees liars and honest people. But that's a personal choice. For me, having my heart open is critical. It's key for me. I would be much more worried about my heart being closed than about getting duped by someone who lied to me. That doesn't worry me nearly as much as closing my heart does. So yeah, you could get hurt again. But the gift of an open heart is the greatest gift. And you'll learn, you're young. You'll learn how to keep an open heart without becoming a doormat. Keeping your common sense, keeping your intuition, keeping your GPS on, but keeping your heart open. Sure. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over. And I think at 8:30, are we doing we are. At 8:30 this evening, we're going to be having right here a special fire ceremony. It's what we call a Swaha Ceremony, where it's a ceremony of letting go of all of that, whether it's things that have happened to us, whether it's ways of thinking in our own minds, identities, expectations, attachments. We offer them into the sacred fire. So we're going to be doing that ceremony here at 8:30 this evening. It's a special ceremony, and it's open to any of you who would like to join us. Just come back and show up at 8:30 and you can take part in the sacred ceremony. It's probably about 20-25 minutes.